All right, so let me talk for a bit about Wolves, right? This is
Sure.
an Apple TV release. Just to get this out of the way, I did not watch the trailer for this, right? I just saw Wolves, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. I was like, okay, but I want to go in blinder, because I saw that there was going to be an Apple TV release, right? So it had the theatrical run in the States, but I just figure I could wait till it comes out online, right? Which is exactly what I did. Saying this too because I went in blind to this. I had no clue what it was about. I just kind of had an idea of what the tone of it might be, but then also to the director involved, which is John Watts, who you would know as the director of the MCU Spider-Man trilogy, right? And he also wrote the script for this as well, right? So what's it about? It is about these two fixers, these professional fixers, right? We're not given the names of these two guys, right? But what happens is that this district attorney, Margaret, right, played by Amy Ryan, she calls one of them because this guy, this kid that she was with, right, OD'd and supposedly died, right? So she's not sure what's going on. She doesn't know what to do. She can't clean up the body, right? And it's in this really swanky hotel as well too. So she really have no clue what to do, right? So she called one of them. She actually calls George Clooney's character, to be precise. He comes in and he does his thing, right? But at the same time, Brad Pitt's character shows up as well too to handle the same job. But what happens is that the person who is running the hotel herself, and we actually don't see her face, right? But she's Pamela, that's the character's name, played by Frances McDormand. I was like, hey, you in this too? All right, no problem. But you don't see her face, you just hear her voice, right? I wouldn't say how, but you just hear her voice, right? So she called Brad Pitt now to show up to do the same job, right? So now we have the situation, they have to get rid of the body, right? But then, surprise, surprise, the person actually is not dead. He is alive. He just OD'd, right? But what happened is that he kind of find himself in this weird position with his district attorney, right? But he was supposed to deliver these drugs, I think it's like 3 or 4 bricks to these Armenians. So it's like a job he had to do now. But he just sort of found himself in this hotel with this woman, and for sex pretty much, right? But then it sort of ends the way how it ends, kinda, right? And now George and Brad have to kind of help him do the job and sort of figure out what's going on, right? And it takes place over the course of this long ass night, right? So just to get this out of the way, right? The title is really clever though, in terms of how it's spelled, right? WOLFS, right? It's not WOLVES, right? And it makes sense too because the characters themselves, both of them, each see themselves as a lone wolf, right? And if you're familiar with noir, these guys work alone, right? They do the job, they get paid, that's what it is. They don't have a partner. They just kind of do things on their own. They kind of see the world, in a certain way, right? It's all about kill or be killed, that kind of vibe, right? So these two characters kind of take it the same way and basically being the same person. That's like this running joke that, basically they kind of move the same exact way, right? That's why the title is what it is, right? That's why there's a S right after wolf, right? So think about it, it makes sense, right? That being said though, I will say that as a low-key neo-noir comedy with some action here or there, this show actually works, right? But I can its digital release actually makes a lot of sense though, because not saying that this wouldn't have made money in the box office, but I feel like people would have gone in expecting some big action extravaganza or some big, something along the line of, say, like The Fall Guy, for example, right? Where it's not just about the mystery and the comedy and the references to genre, but you also have something big budget and a lot of over the top action and whatnot, right? You don't really get that here. Everything is very low key, very kind of subdued, if you will, right? And it sort of adds to the realism of the story itself, right? But one thing I have to give credit to though, and I mean I'm a huge sucker for neo-noir though, is just how this world looks, right? Just how it's all nighttime, right? So that's the neon lit cinematography though, I thought was excellent, right? Then also something I didn't know, it's all set during Christmas time as well too. So you just get some nice snowy exteriors and all that kind of stuff, and that's the way how the city looks though. The city itself feels like a character in this movie, right? should come as no surprise though. George and Brad kill it though, and really what sells it though is their chemistry, right? Even though they are playing characters who don't like each other, because yeah, I do this on my own. I don't need you around. Stop telling me what to do, right? Yeah, how they bounce off each other is excellent, right? Just the timing, the comedic timing is pitch perfect in my opinion, right? And yes, they are the reasons why this show absolutely works, right? And it's great just seeing these two, right? Because I think the last time they were together was in Ocean's 13, you know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? It just works how they bounce off each other. Just play these two old weathered fixers who, yeah, know a lot about the world and know a lot about the criminal underworld and all that kind of stuff, right? And they know how to manage and survive, right? But they both being told, you don't know nothing, you don't understand what nothing, why you doing this so, you can do this a much better way, right? And it just makes for some great humor, right? Again, because it's neo-noir, we're dealing with dark humor there. I would say very dry, dark humor as well, right? So, yes, it's a lot of dry jokes, but I think for the most part it works, right? There's nothing too over the top as whatnot. Or I should say the only over the top character really in this is the kid, right? There's this really over the top, really ridiculous in retrospect though, but it's entertaining as hell though. Chase scene involving the kid, right, who is played by Austin Abrams, right? He actually was from The Walking Dead. He played Ron, but I don't remember him in The Walking Dead. He also was in Euphoria, but I still haven't seen Euphoria, right? So forgive me.
Right.
I guess if you see the face, you'll be like, oh, I know this guy because I saw Euphoria a time back or whatever it is, right? But yeah, this is a chase scene with him that is so ridiculous, but it absolutely works. And again, the city being a character as well, yeah, it adds a lot to it, right? And yeah, I kind of like, in addition to neo-noir stories, right? I kind of like stories that take place over the course of one night, right? Where just characters is sort of out of the element, kind of, and they're just trying to do this one thing, but it takes place overnight, and they're just trying to not just keep their eyes open, but just kind of keep abreast of what's going on around them, right? So I like stories like that, right? What I will say though, just as a couple gripes though, is that the story itself doesn't do anything overly major, overly different or groundbreaking, right? Because it's set in that genre of neo-noir, you kind of know the vibe, you kind of know the gist of things, so nothing really comes off as too surprising or shocking, right? And also, we have a villain or two, but they just kind of like, I'm not saying that they could have been fully fleshed out, like when they're there, but because of how the story is told and because of the pacing of the story as well, because the show itself is not a long film, it's like about an hour and 40 minutes with some change, right? So you're not gonna get a lot of time spent on establishing any character to begin with, right? You just sort of get an idea of who they are, how they see the world, how they talk, how they move, and that's pretty much it, right? So you don't get a lot when it comes to characterization, right? But in the case of this show here, I think that it works. It kind of makes sense, making the story very straightforward and not too detailed. But yeah, it is, like, when you think about it, kind of a gripe too, because yeah, with that, you don't really get a lot of surprises. You don't really get like some big character moments or anything like that, right? It just sort of starts and ends, but it's just about the interaction between the characters. That's really what sells. That just the situation that they find themselves in, but they didn't want to be in it, of course, because they just kind of came to do one thing and then it just led to something else. That's really the gist of the show, right? But that's lastly, it being released digitally makes sense, right? Because again, I don't think this movie would have made a lot of money in the box office, even with those two leads, even with George and Brad there. I'm not saying this from a Gen Z perspective, like, oh, people don't want to see
right,
George Clooney and Brad Pitt, they're too old, blah. But no, it's not that. It's just how the story is told, what the story is about. It's not too spectacular. That's really the best way I could sum it up. But it's not too much of a detriment, but it kind of bogs down the show a bit, right? Just the sense that it doesn't do too much, even though it's not required to, if that makes sense, right? But yeah, for what it's worth, I think that it just made for a solid time, man. I found myself really enjoying this as well. Just for the aesthetic though, just for the tone of it, just for the vibe of it. And I will say, because of the Christmas time setting, if you're looking for a anti-Christmas movie, even though it doesn't really bring up Christmas. It's not a Christmas movie per se, like say,
Right.
how to say, like a Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. But I would say if you're looking for films like that, something really darker and more cynical, for Christmas time viewing, I would say watch this, and yeah, I do hope that, and I could actually see myself rewatching this around Christmas time. If I get fed up of watching A Christmas Story a million and one times, I could tune into this, But again, very low key, very straightforward, nothing too elaborate, nothing too complex. It's just a straightforward story. That's what it is, right? And, again, because I just love me some neo-noir shit, yeah, I just found myself really enjoying this, right? But at the end of the day, what really sells it, what really makes the show work is the chemistry between George and Brad, though. Just two veteran actors, two great actors, just bounce off each other, just playing these cool, badass characters who, just pretty much constantly being told, you're not cool, you're not a badass, stop fronting. You know what I mean? So it's like that, and it works, right? So for me, rating wise, I'm gonna give this a decent, a strong 3.5 out of 5, man. I think that it is worth checking out, but don't go into this one expecting some big action extravaganza. It's not that. It's not an action extravaganza. It's not a comedy extravaganza. It's not even a crime extravaganza. It's just, just these characters in the situation, sort out plot, point A to point B. That's what it is, right? But I would have decided if I come out of this like, yeah, it was fine, but I don't know, I just kind of wanted more out of this, right? Character wise, story wise. I imagine you would come out of it like, yeah, but it could have had more to it. And yes, a part of me feels that way too. But at the same time, it's like, this is the story. It's not a exercise in neo-noir filmmaking or storytelling. It's just a straightforward story. That's what it is, right? And lastly, I would say John Watts, you could tell, is having a blast with this, not just with the script and the sharp writing and the really sharp dialogue, I must say, but just the direction too. I think direction-wise, it was strong throughout. And I think like outside of the Spider-Man movies, I don't really know him from anything else though, right? But I think I know he did Cop Car, but I haven't seen Cop Car in like ages, so that's what
that's what I remember liking. I like Cop Car, a lot of fun, but
I don't remember anything from that, but I remember seeing it too, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Wolves kind of gives John the excuse to be a little darker, to be a little edgy, you know what I mean? To again just tap into that neo-noir stuff. And I think that he does a great job though, just with the writing and the direction here, right? Just a simple story. You go in, you go out, that's what it is, right? Not saying that he's going to be doing more films like that in the near future, but I would like to see him do more R-rated films like that, right? With a dark sense of humor, with a nice atmosphere, with a nice style to it. I would love to see him do more films like that in the near future, right? But yeah, it's on Apple TV right now. I say, check it out. But again, don't go in expecting this thing to be some extravaganza, right? Or some game-changing film. It is what it is. And yeah, for the most part, I had fun with it.